2. Hello and welcome to Finchloom's 5 weeks of 30-minute webinars. Today is April 22nd, and we're going to be talking about getting rid of your servers. Azure Infrastructure as a Service. So my name is Jim Richardson. I'm the founder of Finchloom, and we're in the middle of our 5 weeks of 30-minute webinars. Here's a quick introduction of the webinars we've got the rest of this week and a list of webinars we have next week. So we encourage you to go to our website at finchloom.com/5 weeks and sign up for these webinars. Today's event is, like I said, all about getting rid of your servers. And we're going to have 3 presenters today who will talk to you about Microsoft Azure and how Finchloom can help with getting your servers and your workloads into Azure. First up is our host, Brian Levine, our Chief Operating Officer. Then he's going to hand it off to Nate Jimerson, our VP of Professional Services, to talk a little bit about what Azure is and what it can do for you. And then in the middle, we'll have AJ Smith take over and describe our methodologies for how we help customers assess their server environments and give them good recommendations on how they can move to Azure. So with that, I'd like to hand this over to Brian, who's going to take us through the agenda today. So Brian, would you please?
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that introduction. It's very nice. So for the agenda in today's show, first we're going to go over who we are and how we could possibly help you guys out in the future and today as it relates to your technology needs. Going to give you a brief overview of Microsoft Azure and really what is that and how it can possibly help you in many facets of your business as it relates to offsetting costs and disaster recovery and storage and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll get into why get rid of these servers that are still sitting in your IT closet or in your data center. The pros and cons of CapEx versus OpEx, for example. Finchloom, the approach to server assessment and our action. And then we'll talk about, Nate actually will talk about our flight program, which is basically a cloud roadmap. And then we'll talk about next steps. So who is Finchloom? Real down and dirty and simple, we are 100% Microsoft Cloud partner. That's all we do. We never were not in the cloud. So we are experts as it relates to the cloud stack that Microsoft brings to the table, whether that's obviously Azure, which is what we're talking about today, or Office 365 or any other of their cloud solutions. We're based here in Southern California. We're in Agoura Hills, our corporate headquarters. We do have a location out in New England, and we do cover clients throughout the United States and around the world, actually. So being in the cloud and born in the cloud, you don't have to have physical presence everywhere anymore, as it was back in the day. There's 2 sides of our business. We have a professional services side, which does primarily project work. And then we also have a cloud operations side, which does a lot of work around supporting the services that are now in the cloud. And we have a lot of tools and bells and tricks to help you maximize your Microsoft investment and get true ROI on that investment. So with that, I'm going to, I think I'm handing it off to you, Nate, correct?
Yep, that's
all right. I did good.
You did great.
All right.
All right, so what is Microsoft Azure? So that's Microsoft Azure is Microsoft's cloud platform. As you can see on these slides, it's hyperscale cloud, which means it can grow and expand to meet your current and future needs. The paradigm shift that we always thought of as far as moving to the cloud and that migration, it's no longer the paradigm shift. It is the new norm. And the great thing about moving into Azure is that you're no longer purchasing for the highest level of performance that you perceive your servers and platforms will require. You purchase what you need now with the confidence that Microsoft can scale to meet the needs as they arrive. Basically, you're only paying for what you need now, as opposed to in the past, we had that large upfront expense where we purchased a server based on the future capabilities that we thought we would need, the maximum that we thought we would need. Infrastructure as a service, replacing your data centers, getting rid of your server rooms and getting rid of those servers. The 3 main areas are associated with compute, storage and networking, that processing power that you need, the storage that you need, and as well as the connectivity that you need to those servers so that you have the speed and performance that's going to be required for yourself. Storage is another thing that gets really creative. There are different tiers of storage to lower your costs, make it available as you need, but also cold storage where you can lower your cost and maintain the level of redundancy and retention that you require for whatever your industry compliance requirements are. Hybrid capabilities, right? We're not going to just flip a switch and take everything from your on-premises server rooms and data centers and move that right to the cloud. They have stages where you can license and have a hybrid implementation where you've got some things in the cloud and some things remaining on-premises, and simplifying that migration. There are other things like Microsoft's backup and site recovery features, which make the migration simple, but it also allows you to test out those proof of concepts and see how they actually function in your environment. We love analogies here at Finchloom, and one of the key ones that we talk about is, you don't take all of your money and just leave it in a safe or a vault within your office, right? Why are you leaving the core to your business sitting in a closet or a data center somewhere? Microsoft provides the cloud platform and the security and confidence that you need to know that you've got not only the services, but the redundancy required to protect your business. Couple of things about why to migrate your servers to Azure. Old and inconsistent Windows operating systems, those servers that we have out there in the server room and the data center, they're hard to maintain. And what you end up with is a myriad of different versions and years worth of operating systems that are hard for your IT department to maintain, upgrade. And because it's so hard, you get that inconsistency. They've just stopped maintaining them in that way. Well, Azure takes that problem out of the equation. Things like too many SQL servers, you can now use applications as a service and have the processing power and the consistency that simplifies that, as well as not having to worry about upgrades and patching. Out of warranty hardware and software, old things like VMware and other virtualization tools, that problem is removed. Your backup and your antivirus and your configurations and your monitoring, all covered. As we mentioned before, disaster recovery and business continuity is greatly simplified by allowing you to flip switches and implement redundancy and backups in different geographical regions, as well as looking at how that data is stored to lower costs. Normally I wouldn't do this, but since we've got our next IT expert who also has an accounting background, I'm going to turn it over to AJ Smith to talk about our CapEx and OpEx topic. AJ, I'm going to take it.
Thanks so much, Nate. Appreciate it. Yeah, because this is the easy one to talk about, right? So your CapEx versus your OpEx considerations here. So some companies prefer to hold things in capital expenditures so that you can take advantage of things like depreciation over the course of time and give you a little bit of tax benefit as needed. Other companies prefer to operate on an OpEx platform where you keep most of your costs in your operating expenses. And especially if you're one of those organizations, a shift from physical server hardware and maintaining the physical licenses on-prem, shifting that up to Azure gives you a lot of opportunity to shift over to an OpEx structure and relieve some of that capital expenditure. That also gives you the opportunity to potentially shift some of your money within your company. As long as you've got the room within your OpEx budget, you all of a sudden have all of this freed up CapEx budget, and you can invest in other areas of the company as well. So that definitely gives you an opportunity to be a little bit flexible with what you're doing with your money within the company. I'll go ahead and run with the rest of this one as well, Nate. So the physical costs, your air conditioning, your power, your racks, security, internet, redundant internet, et cetera, that we've got listed here. Anybody who's ever worked in a data center environment or in a network closet has seen the amount of air conditioning and power that gets consumed. And anybody who's dealt with, trying to run the payables on those things also has seen just the massive amount of money that can go into storing these things, whether they're in whether they're in the on-prem data center sort of environment in a network closet or an actual data center. Those costs can skyrocket through the roof before you know it. So this is also another opportunity to shift that cost into Microsoft and save quite a bit of money while you're doing it. All right, so at this point, we're gonna go into a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. This is something that we've decided to give everybody, however ill-advised it may be, to essentially walk you guys through our process and explain what we do, right? And I say ill-advised because we're essentially giving you guys the roadmap that's made Finchloom successful to this point. We're gonna walk you guys through what we actually do and how to kind of get started on this process. So this is a part that if you're interested in this at all, definitely take this to heart and start considering doing some of this stuff in preparation for this sort of a move. So the first piece that we do when we go into a client is we assess the current environment. So take a server inventory. Do you have a current one? If you don't have a current server inventory, this is something you should probably do regardless, whether you're looking at moving into Azure or not. It's always good to know exactly what you have. This is going to include your app and workload, so that you know not only what physical servers you have, but what licenses are on those servers, what applications are they run, what other features are built into the servers, what workload is being run on these servers. If you do have a server inventory, make sure it's completely updated, especially if you're looking to move to Azure, because you're going to want that true apples to apples comparison with what it's going to look like once it's in the cloud.
Hey AJ, we have our first question.
Excellent.
Someone would like to know if Finchloom sells Azure subscriptions or if they can buy them directly from Microsoft.
Finchloom absolutely does sell server subscription or Azure subscriptions. And for that one, I'm going to go ahead and toss that question over to Brian, who is our licensing and subscriptions expert on the call at the moment.
Whoa. I don't know if I'm an expert on the licensing side, but the answer to the question is absolutely you could do both, really. The advantage of buying it through a partner like Finchloom is that you get all this additional support that you will not get from going to the mothership, as I like to call Microsoft. So there are large advantages to buying it through Finchloom, and please reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you about that and go forward from there. As far as the cost is, there is no difference in cost, whether you buy from Microsoft or from us. You get the same MSRP pricing. The additional advantage not advantage, but the nuance with Azure subscriptions versus Office 365 E3 licensing, for example, is it's throttled, right? So you only pay for what you use, like your utility for Southern California Edison, for example. You only pay if you keep the lights on. If you shut it down over the weekend, you're not paying for it. So there's ways we could help you mitigate the costs associated with Azure, and those types of questions and guidance you're not going to get from when you just go online and buy it from Microsoft. Hopefully that answers the question, but please feel free to reach out to us to dive into that rabbit hole a little further.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Matt. All right. So the next item we have here is under the assessment. Are you current on your OS and user licenses? And do you have software assurance or no? So you want to make sure that you're always keeping current on operating systems and user licenses, obviously. But you can fall into a little bit of a trap with Microsoft where maybe you're building out a dev environment. And you don't necessarily have the user CALs that you need for that license or for that server, and then you shift that away from dev and into production. All of a sudden you're behind on your CALs. It's easy to lose track of that stuff, and if you ever fall under an audit, it can cost a lot in time and money and resources. The software assurance piece is also something to consider. If you've got software assurance, that's great, but the cost that goes along with that is also something to consider. So these are all things that you're going to want to assess going in, is double checking. Are we good on our CALs? Are we good on our user licenses? Is our OS up to date? Again, something that you should probably do regardless of whether you're looking to a shift to Azure or not. The next piece to take a look at is, are you current on your hardware warranties? If something were to break tomorrow, are you covered? Are you going to get that replaced? Or are you in a place where your hardware warranty is gone and maybe your server's heading more towards end of life? That would definitely be a consideration when determining whether or not you want to try to shift to Azure. Same with OS applications, server OS and application versions. Making sure that they're current, sort of the same conversation that we're talking about on OS and user licenses. Outdated hardware, OS licenses and versions are the biggest risk to an infrastructure and therefore to the business. This is essentially what we're discussing in terms of end of life, right? If you're coming down to the end of life and something breaks, You may have a business critical application sitting on one of these servers and absolutely no recourse other than dipping into your pockets and shelling out large amounts of money to get it fixed quickly. Otherwise, your entire business could stop working. That's definitely a use case to look at Azure, where you're not going to have to worry about that sort of a consideration literally ever again. All right, so what do you do with your servers? So once Finchloom is done with the assessment, we start to go into the needs requirements, right? The needs assessment. So now we've got a good idea of where your company is today, and now we're going to be looking at what are you looking to get to. So do we want to upgrade the operating systems? Do we need to perform security updates, check for vulnerabilities, make sure that we've got adequate capabilities on each of these servers? Do we need to migrate the application to a new operating system? Maybe you have an application that used to operate on server 2012, so you've kept it there. Well, now they have a cloud version of the application. Maybe Azure has a service that covers what you need as far as that application, or maybe you just need to shift it into server 2016 or 19. If you do that, you know, you can modernize the application and make sure that you've got take advantage of all the new features available. Can you move the app or workload to the cloud? So this is what I was just mentioning in terms of shifting it to an Azure service or a cloud service. Maybe there's serverless software as a service options, either directly from the vendor or from Azure, and you can shift that. Or maybe you can move the workload to the cloud. So if you have a file server and you want to shift it to Microsoft Teams or OneDrive, store your files in the cloud to make sure that you get the redundancy and the expanded feature set there, while also getting rid of your infrastructure and saving some money. Or maybe you just need to keep the server as is. So maybe you have a server that's hosting an application or some software that does not have a cloud service, and you just need to shift it. This would be a lift and shift style migration to Azure, which would allow you to run the server in the cloud as a virtual machine. It's going to be giving you the opportunity to get rid of that hardware while keeping everything else exactly as is. So even down to the maintenance and connection perspective from an IT department, they're still going to connect and manage that the same way that they would today. They're just not going to have that hardware they need to maintain as well. In some cases, you'll have the ability to eliminate the server also, determine whether you actually need a server. Maybe you've got, you know, 4 redundant copies of the same files being stored in multiple locations, and you need to just take that down to 2, or in some cases even 1. So you've got the opportunity to, during this assessment, the needs requirements analysis, determine whether or not you've got an opportunity to completely get rid of some things. And then update your assessment to show what you can gain from this. So throughout the needs requirements and your initial assessment, try and figure out where you can offset costs, where you can benefit, where you can reduce spending, and where you can simplify. Maybe right now you've got multiple different services, multiple different warranties, condensing all into one, sometimes just for the management's sake. You may not be saving as many dollars and cents on the actual infrastructure of the software, but you're going to be saving hours and hours and hours of management for your IT team. And that can obviously have plenty of benefit and cost savings there as well. All right, so the next piece that we do is create a server plan. So once we've got your environment assessed and we've gone through your needs requirements, then we come up with a plan. This is going to be our roadmap. A lot of times we call this a strategic roadmap to the cloud. Now, in some cases, for smaller organizations, this can take a couple of months. We're talking about a 3-month period on the slide here, all the way up to a couple of years, depending on how many servers and dependencies you have. So if you have a very simple, straightforward organization, it may only take a few weeks, handful of weeks to get things migrated. In other cases, if you're extremely complex and you're coming out of multiple data centers and co-locations, you could be talking about a couple of years worth of effort. At the end of the day, you just need to determine whether or not that's going to meet your needs, and then break it into smaller projects to address the workloads, applications and servers one at a time or multiple at a time, but stay consistent across what you're doing so that we're not trying to migrate, 10 different workloads for 10 different departments at the same time. Develop a management and support strategy for the cloud. Make sure that you're offsetting costs where you can with on-prem. So if you have your backup currently on-prem and you want to migrate that to the cloud, that's a great use case for costs offsetting. And make sure that you're realizing that within the plan. That way you're not having a finance department come crashing down on you when you're trying to migrate into Azure. You can show them those offsetting costs. Also consider staff training versus outsourcing. If you have the internal resources who are familiar with these types of platforms, used to working in virtualized environments, used to working on software as a service, maybe a little bit of training up to get them used to the Azure platform is worth it. If you're a little bit under manned in the IT department, maybe consider outsourcing. This is an area that Finchloom does quite a bit of work with our SMB clients. that need a little bit of help as essentially using us as their IT department when it comes to supporting their servers and their software as a service once it's been pushed into Azure.
Yeah, that was a great point, AJ, because that's going back to that question that Matt posted. That's one of the advantages going through Finchloom versus Microsoft right there. So just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. So once you've got that planned out, start attacking the workloads and updating your plans. So obviously, anybody who's ever dealt with a project plan in sort of a linear format, you've got that old style waterfall, get this done, and then we get that done, and then we get that done type of attack. So start attacking those workloads. Take it off bit by bit. It may seem intimidating at the beginning, but the more you chunk away at it and update the plan to see what's left, the more you're going to start realizing the benefits, and it's going to make it a lot less intimidating to make that move. And then continue to share your successes as you work on the plan with management and the business. So this is a really key, important bullet, and I want to make sure we don't just graze over this. One of the things that we hear quite a bit from clients is, that they're getting pressure from above to make sure they're moving quickly or make sure that they're reducing cost, while at the same time hearing, a lot of positive feedback from the IT departments who are now seeing the actual benefits of moving to the cloud and understanding how much it's going to save you down the road. So make sure that you're documenting that with your IT team and sharing that with the management and with the individual business users, the ones who are going through the workload changes on the day-to-day basis, to make sure that you're supported across the board from your organization, and you're not going to be getting a lot of pushback, but instead they're going to be driving adoption by staying excited about the products that you're rolling out.
Right. That's great, AJ. Thanks very much. And just to continue with what he's saying there, right? What we're doing is we're demonstrating the effectiveness of the roadmap that's been created for the organization, and that's one of the key deliverables within a Finchloom FLIGHT program. Another thing that AJ mentioned before is you're performing the assessment, and this was just an add-on to one of those bullet points. One of the values with the Finchloom FLIGHT program is that we provide a comprehensive assessment of your environment, so that not only with Azure, what we're looking at, moving those workloads, but we're also identifying opportunities within your licensing program, like a Microsoft 365 license suite that offers OneDrive and Teams and SharePoint for moving files, like your file servers. So you can, as we're looking at your environment, you can offset the cost of those file servers by using the licensing and the storage capabilities that you're already paying for. It's another value add that we provide. And that starts with the custom assessment of your environment, developing a roadmap to the cloud that is unique to your environment and identifies not only the opportunities for offsetting those costs, but the prioritizations and the risks associated with those migrations. We can help you with the sizing and the pricing of your environment, as well as the ongoing purchasing your subscription through Finchloom provides the ongoing analysis of, are we spending our money appropriately? Are there cost saving opportunities with how we store our data? Do we need more or less capacity and infrastructure requirements? And that's sort of analysis that you get by going through Finchloom.
Hey, Nate, we have a question actually about our flight program.
Great.
It says, do your people work with our people to help teach and mentor them?
We absolutely do. And this is one of the core tenets to Finchloom as an organization. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but our CEO, Jim Richardson, who's working behind the scenes as a producer today on today's webinar, but one of the things that he identifies himself as is a teacher. And we work very closely with the IT departments and the systems administrators to make sure that we don't leave you with something that binds you to a relationship for support. We teach you to manage and administer the environments that we build out so that you're independent. We don't want you left with something that's either unwieldy or not understood. One of the other key components of a flight program is it provides predictable monthly payments. There's no per hour charges because you're within the flight program. There's a fixed monthly fee, but then there's no per hour charges for those granular work streams. You're provided ongoing meetings and reports that track not only your progress on the individual projects, but those offsetting costs that our leadership teams like to see so much. What have we performed? How did that impact the previous costs of the environment, and where do we stand with ongoing costs today? And it's one of those justification factors that provides that continuing confidence and ongoing support from our leadership teams. And our Finchloom flight program is available on 3 to 6 month timeframes. And I think that's it for our flight program. Back to Brian to talk about what our next steps are.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. So for next steps, let's talk about how to assess your servers and look for offsetting costs and plan your migration. So one of the first steps is kind of like what we've already touched on, which is assessing your current state of the environment, the hardware that's currently stored in a closet and or in a colo somewhere, and then give you a roadmap or what we like to call a scope of work and or a letter of engagement on what it would take to migrate those workloads into Azure. So feel free to send us a request to contact you directly. Go to finchloom.com and you can reach out to us via that mechanism. And please register for our upcoming webinars, which are rapidly approaching this week and next week. So we have plenty of room. So feel free to sign up and spend 30 minutes of your day with us. Since we're all in quarantine anyway, I'm sure you could carve out 30 minutes and join us for a little education. So thanks again for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys on future webinars. Thank you.